My name is Nicole T. Hayes, and I am 34 years old. My sister Jill looked across the table at my son and said, "We didn't order for him," then handed Mason a bread basket, while her own kids waited for $100 steaks and dessert. My father added, "You should have packed him something." I smiled, looked at the waiter and said, "Noted." I have spent most of my adult life cleaning up after Jill's messes, financial messes, emotional messes, childcare messes, last-minute emergency getaways that somehow required me to babysit while she found herself at a resort with a cocktail in her hand. I did it quietly because I was trained to believe that reliable people do not complain. Reliable people show up. Reliable people cover the difference. Reliable people swallow the hurt and call it maturity. Jill has always lived like consequences were something other people handled. She could miss rent, overdraw accounts, start fights, quit jobs, forget school forms, and somehow my parents would always sigh and say the same thing. "She's going through a lot." As if I wasn't. As if being the stable daughter meant I had no right to fall apart. My mother always said Jill was sensitive. My father said I was stronger. It took me years to realize stronger was just another way of saying they expected me to need less. So when I offered to pay for my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, it mattered to me. I wanted one peaceful night. One room where we could sit down, eat a good meal, and pretend the word family still meant something solid. I booked the best steakhouse in town, arranged a private room, and had an old wedding photo of my parents restored and framed. I even wore the blue dress Mason said made me look like a fancy teacher, which was his highest compliment. We arrived 5 minutes early. Mason held my hand as we walked in, nervous but excited in that quiet way of his. He had asked 3 times in the car if dessert was allowed. I told him he could order whatever he wanted because tonight was special. He smiled so big I almost forgot what family gatherings usually did to us. Inside, Jill and her husband Doug were already seated. Their boys were glued to tablets, drinks sweating on the white tablecloth in front of them. Jill did not stand. She just looked over her shoulder and said, "Oh, hey," like I had stopped by uninvited. My mother gave me a distracted hug. My father barely looked up. No one asked Mason how school was. No one noticed the gift bag in my hand. I sat beside Mason and helped him unfold his napkin. He opened the menu with both hands, like it was a treasure map. "Can I get chicken tenders?" he whispered. "Of course," I said, reaching to flag down the waiter. That was when Jill leaned over, pulled the bread basket toward him and said, "We didn't order for your son." She said it casually, like she was explaining where the restroom was. I blinked. "Excuse me?" Dad did not even hesitate. "You should have packed him something if you knew he'd be hungry." The room did not explode. That was the worst part. No one gasped. No one corrected him. My mother looked down at her water. Jill smirked. Doug suddenly became fascinated with his drink. Mason's face changed only a little, but I saw it. The way his eyes dropped. The way his shoulders folded inward, like he was trying to become smaller at a table where children with my sister's last name were welcome to eat anything they wanted. Something inside me became very calm. I waved the waiter over. When he reached the table, I stood. "Please cancel any orders that haven't gone to the kitchen yet," I said. "Anything already on the way can go on my father's bill. It's his anniversary, after all." The room went silent. Then I added, "My son will have the ribeye, medium rare, with truffle mac and cheese and a Coke. Make it quick, please." Doug coughed into his napkin. Jill stared at me like I had slapped her. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Across the table, Uncle Gary let out one low laugh, and Aunt Denise did not even try to hide her smile. I sat down and handed Mason a breadstick. He was still quiet. But when he looked at me, I saw it. He knew I had stood up for him. Dinner limped forward after that, cold and awkward. When it ended, I gave the framed wedding photo to the waiter and asked him to place it on the table after we left. Then I took Mason's hand and walked out. That night, my phone started blowing up, and the next morning they came to my house. They did not even text first. The next morning, My parents and Jill pulled into my driveway like it was their property and marched up the steps with the confidence of people who had never been told no long enough to believe it. Doug was not with them, which told me plenty. He had always been excellent at disappearing when Jill's behavior needed defending out loud. Mason saw them through the window before I did. He was sitting on the couch with his Switch, but the second their car stopped outside, his shoulders tightened. He did not say anything. He just looked up at me with the same tired expression I had seen in my own mirror too many times. That was what made my decision easy. They could make me feel guilty. They could twist my childhood into a weapon. But they were not going to teach my son that love meant accepting crumbs while others ate steak. I picked up my phone and called Uncle Gary. "They're here." "We'll be there in 10, he said. No questions, no lecture. That was why I trusted him. I opened the front door before they could ring the bell. My mother walked in first like she owned the air. Jill followed with folded arms and a hard jaw. My father came last, holding a manila envelope like he was about to serve me legal papers. Nobody greeted me. Nobody looked at Mason. They came for one thing, and it was not reconciliation. Jill started immediately. "You embarrassed the entire family last night." I stayed quiet. Mom jumped in, voice trembling with practiced outrage. "You made a scene. You disrespected your father. We have never been so humiliated in public." That almost made me laugh. These were the same people who once had a shouting match in a Chili's over an expired coupon. But apparently my son getting a real meal was where dignity died. Dad placed the envelope on my counter and tapped it with 2 fingers. "That is the invoice for the private room. $1,000. Since you abandoned your responsibility, we expect you to pay your share." "My share," I repeated. "Nicole," Mom warned. "Wait here," I said. I walked away, and 2 minutes later, Uncle Gary and Aunt Denise came in through the side door. The temperature in the room changed immediately. Mom's face fell. Jill muttered something under her breath. Dad looked like he had swallowed a lemon. I stood across from them in the kitchen. "I've decided I'm done supporting Jill." Jill snapped. "Excuse me?" "I'm done," I said. "She is not my child. I'm not her backup bank. I have been covering half her rent for most of the year. That ends today. If she and Doug want to stay in that apartment, Doug can help, or Jill can figure it out." Jill started yelling, but Aunt Denise cut through it without raising her voice. "When is the last time any of you helped Nicole?" Silence. Denise continued, calm and devastating. "She has paid bills, watched children, covered rent, answered crisis calls, bought gifts, hosted holidays, and swallowed disrespect for years. Last night, you let her son be treated like he did not belong at a family table. So I will ask again. When did you help her?" No one answered. I picked up the envelope, opened it, and scanned the invoice. "Here is what I'll do. I'll give you $500, not because I owe it, but because I want the record clear that I did not leave you with the whole bill. After that, not one more cent." Dad's hand slammed the counter. "You are punishing your sister." "No," I said. "I am resigning." Jill looked like she might lunge at me. "You think you're better than us?" "No, I think I'm done being used by you." "Get out," I said after another few seconds of silence. They did not move at first, so I opened the door and waited. Uncle Gary stood too. That was enough. They left muttering. My mother crying just loud enough to be heard, Jill throwing one last glare over her shoulder like this was not over. And she was right. It started with calls, then voicemails, then long messages about pride, family, cruelty, and how I had changed. I ignored all of it. 2 days later, Jill posted a vague Facebook status about relatives who think they are better than everyone else. My mother created a group text with extended family, saying she was heartbroken that one daughter had cut off family for no reason. Uncle Gary replied once, "We know exactly what is going on." Jill left the chat 10 minutes later. A week after the dinner, Mason's school called. Someone had made an anonymous report about his emotional well-being. The counselor was kind, but the message was clear. Someone wanted to put my parenting under a microscope. That night, my father showed up at my work and handed me a printed photo from the steakhouse. I was standing. Mason was looking up at me. Everyone else was frozen behind us. Dad had circled himself in red marker and written, "This is who you embarrassed." I handed it back. "Leave." That night, I wrote one final letter asking for peace, respect, and honesty. They answered with another Facebook post. And that was the last straw. The Facebook post from my mother was not loud. That was what made it crueler. No screaming caption, no direct accusation, just a smiling photo of her, Jill, and Jill's kids sitting on my parents' porch with cupcakes and matching sweaters. Under it, she wrote, "Family is everything, even if some people forget what that means." I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting to feel rage. Instead, I felt emptiness. Like I was watching strangers perform a version of love I had never actually received. That was the moment I stopped hoping they would understand. I was done explaining pain to people who used confusion as a shield. I started gathering proof that night. Not for revenge, at least not at first, for sanity. I emailed Jill's landlord and asked for documentation of every partial rent payment I had made on her behalf. He sent the records within an hour. 7 months. $5,700. Line by line. Dates, amounts, confirmation numbers. I printed everything, highlighted the payments, and put them into a flat manila envelope. No note, no angry paragraph, just evidence. I mailed it to Jill. 12 minutes after delivery, she texted me a screenshot of her Venmo balance. $34. Under it she wrote, "Take me to court then." I did not answer. I had learned by then that silence can be sharper than any insult. Later that night, I posted anonymously in a private parenting group I had been in for years. I wrote, "Would you forgive your sister if she took money from you for 7 months, lied about needing it, humiliated your child at a family dinner, and then publicly shamed you for setting a boundary?" I expected a few comments, maybe some sympathy. Instead, hundreds of mothers replied. Some were furious for me. Some told stories that sounded so much like mine, I had to close the app for a while. One woman wrote, "I tried to forgive mine. 10 years later, I'm still paying for what she broke." Then a private message arrived from a woman I did not know. She said she used to work with Jill at a digital marketing firm. According to her, Jill had once filed a false HR complaint after a minor disagreement and got her demoted. 3 months later, that woman lost her job. I did not believe it at first. Not fully, until she sent proof. A photo from a pool party. Jill in a designer dress, wine glass in hand, laughing beside a rented cabana. The timestamp was the same weekend Jill told me Doug had been rushed to the ER and she needed emergency money. I had sent her $200 that afternoon. I saved everything. The next day, while clearing space in the garage, I found an old childhood box. Dusty photo albums, crayon drawings, birthday cards my mother had kept because she liked appearing sentimental when it cost nothing. At the bottom was an envelope addressed to my father in my mother's handwriting. The date was 1 week after I was born. I should not have read it, but I did. She wrote about being exhausted, overwhelmed, how she had only just gotten used to being Jill's mother and did not want another child. Then came the sentence that stopped my breathing. "I don't think I'll ever bond with this new baby. I feel like I'm faking it. I'm too tired to try." I sat on the garage floor for almost an hour, holding that paper while the house went dark around me. Every cold look, every sigh, every time Jill's crisis mattered more than my quiet pain suddenly rearranged itself into a pattern. I had spent my whole life trying to earn warmth from a woman who admitted at the beginning that she did not want to try. That night, after Mason fell asleep, I opened my laptop and wrote one email to my parents and Jill. No insults, no pleading, just facts. The money, the lies, the rent records, the school call, the public posts, the manipulation. At the bottom, I attached a photo of the last page of the letter. "I don't think I'll ever bond with this new baby. I feel like I'm faking it. I'm too tired to try. Then I hit send and blocked them everywhere. I thought that would end it. Less than 48 hours later, 2 women from Child Protective Services knocked on my door. Someone had reported that Mason was being left alone for long stretches, that he seemed withdrawn, possibly neglected. I cannot describe that feeling, except to say it was like ice sliding down my spine. But I did not panic. I let them in. They checked the fridge, Mason's room, his school records, his schedule. They spoke to his school the same day. Everything proved the report was false. One caseworker apologized quietly on the way out, but the principal later warned me, even unfounded reports can trigger escalation if there's another call. That was when I understood. This was not family drama anymore. It was war. I sat on the living room floor for almost an hour after CPS left, staring at the carpet while Mason built a Lego spaceship beside me, like the world had not just tilted. He looked up once and asked, "Are those ladies coming back?" I wanted to say no with absolute certainty. I wanted to promise him nobody from my family could reach through our door again, but the truth sat heavy in my throat. "Not if I can help it," I said. He nodded and went back to building, trusting me with the kind of trust that makes a parent both stronger and terrified. I called Uncle Gary. I told him about the report, the inspection, the school call, the principal's warning. He did not explode the way I expected. He went quiet, which somehow scared me more. Then he said, "That was the warning shot. You need to move, Nicole, not just emotionally, legally." So I did. I pulled out everything. Rent records, Venmo, screenshots, text messages where Jill thanked me for saving her again, photos from the pool party, the landlord documents, the anonymous parenting group messages, the school report showing Mason was fine, the closed CPS assessment, even the birthday card Jill had given Mason when he turned 2, the one I found buried in an old box. "Thanks for always being the stable one," she had written. "I'd fall apart without you." Literally. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it looked like a confession. Uncle Gary gave me the name of a lawyer named Marlene. She was small, silver-haired, and terrifyingly precise. She read through my folder with almost no expression, only occasionally lifting her eyebrows when Jill's audacity outpaced the page. When she finished, she tapped the table once and said, "Your family is using your child to punish you. We stop that now." The cease and desist went out the next morning. One to Jill, one to my mother, one to my father. Each letter documented the harassment, online smears, false school concern, false CPS report, unpaid debt, and threats to my household. The language was clean and cold. Any further contact, report, public accusation, or attempt to interfere with Mason's school or home life would trigger legal action. Then I went to Mason's school. I sat across from the principal with my hands folded so tightly my knuckles ached and added formal restrictions. My parents and Jill were barred from pickup, volunteering, school events, lunch visits, emergency contact access, everything. I handed over photos, names, phone numbers, and the lawyer's letter. The principal looked genuinely sorry. "We'll protect him here," she said. I believed her, but belief did not undo the fact that I had to ask. I changed the locks that same afternoon. Then I updated my will, my medical forms, and Mason's guardianship documents. If anything happened to me, Uncle Gary and Aunt Denise would be the only ones with legal authority over him. Not my parents. Not Jill. Not anyone who thought a hungry child at a steakhouse deserved bread while others ate ribeye. 2 days later, Doug messaged me. I had forgotten I had not blocked him. There was no hello, no explanation, just a screenshot of a bank transfer. $2,850, exactly half of what I had paid toward their rent. A second message followed. I told her to stop. I moved out. Do whatever you need to do. I stared at it for a long time. Doug had been spineless for years, but this was him finally jumping off Jill's sinking ship. Not brave exactly, but late bravery is still better than permanent silence. After that, stories started arriving from relatives. A cousin said Jill borrowed $600 and blocked her. An aunt said she once drove 2 hours to pick Jill up after a fight with Doug and never got a thank you. Denise told me she ran into my mother at the grocery store, muttering about how I was destroying the family. Denise told her, "Nicole didn't destroy anything. She just stopped playing your game." For a moment, I thought maybe that would be the end. The lawyer, the restrictions, Doug leaving, the stories surfacing. It felt like the walls were finally closing around the truth, instead of around me. Then, 2 weeks later, the letter arrived. Not from Jill, not from my parents directly, from their attorney. It was only 1 page, but the sentence in the middle made my stomach turn. They were pursuing grandparent visitation rights for Mason. They had failed to control me. Through money, guilt, shame, and false reports. Now they were going after my son legally. The envelope from their attorney was not thick, but it felt heavier than anything they had sent before. Heavier than the guilt texts, heavier than the Facebook posts, heavier than my father's red-circled photo from the steakhouse. 1 page. 1 threat dressed up in legal language. My parents were pursuing grandparent visitation rights with Mason. They claimed I had abruptly severed his bond with extended family out of spite, that I was damaging his emotional development, that it was in his best interest to maintain a relationship with them. I read it once, then again, and something in me went cold. They had ignored Mason at dinner. They had watched Jill hand him a bread basket while her kids waited for steaks. My father had said I should have packed him something, as if my son was a stray animal I brought into a restaurant by mistake. They had not called to ask if he was okay after the CPS visit. They had not apologized for scaring him, for turning his school into a battlefield, for making him ask whether strangers were coming back to inspect his room. But now they wanted rights. I called Marlene immediately. She read the letter while I sat on the kitchen floor because my legs did not feel steady enough for a chair. After a long pause, she said, "They don't have a case." I closed my eyes. "But," she continued, "this is not really about winning. This is about frightening you. They want you tired enough to negotiate." That was when I understood the pattern completely. Every move they made had the same purpose. Shame me, scare me, exhaust me, make me feel like peace was too expensive and surrender was easier. Not this time. That weekend, Marlene and I prepared the response. We did not just say no. We buried the claim under evidence. The closed CPS report, Mason's school records, the counselor's notes, screenshots of Jill's posts, my mother's captions, my father's messages, the unpaid rent records, Doug's partial repayment, the cease and desist, and proof that they had used public pressure and false concerns after I stopped giving Jill money. Marlene included 1 line I read 3 times because it felt like a shield. The petitioner's interest appears retaliatory rather than child-centered. Retaliatory. Finally, someone put the right name on it. I went back to Mason's school and gave them the updated legal packet. My parents and Jill remained on the restricted list. No pickup, no visits, no classroom access, no information released, nothing. I changed every password tied to school portals, doctors, insurance, banking, utilities. I updated emergency contacts again. Uncle Gary and Aunt Denise were not just backup anymore. They were the wall around us. A friend who worked in social media moderation quietly told me the original anonymous CPS tip came from a neighborhood that made my stomach twist. She could not give me more, and I did not ask her to risk her job. I did not need more. I already knew. The visitation claim was rejected before it could grow teeth. No standing, no evidence of harm, no meaningful pre-existing relationship strong enough to override a fit parent's decision. Marlene called me with the news, and for a few seconds I could not speak. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt tired in my bones. That night, I wrote 1 last letter. Not an email. Not a text they could screenshot and twist. A printed letter mailed through Marlene's office. 1 copy to my parents. 1 copy to Jill. This is the last time you will hear from me. I gave you decades of chances. I helped you. I protected you. I stayed quiet. I played the part you assigned me. You repaid me with betrayal, lies, false reports, public humiliation, and legal threats aimed at my child. You are no longer my family. If you contact me or Mason again, I will pursue a restraining order. If you show up at my home, his school, or my workplace, I will call the police. If you attempt to involve yourself in our lives again, I will make every detail public. We are done for good. Then I blocked what was left to block. I expected grief to come. Maybe guilt. Maybe that old ache that used to make me wonder if I was the cruel one for wanting peace. But nothing came except quiet. The following weekend, I took Mason camping. Just the two of us. No phones, except for emergencies. No family drama. No calls. No waiting for the next attack. We roasted marshmallows under a dark sky full of stars, and Mason laughed when his caught fire and turned black on one side. Later, wrapped in a blanket beside the fire, he looked at me and said, "You seem happier." I looked at him, at the orange glow on his face, at the child I had finally chosen over people who never chose us back. "I am," I said. And I meant it. We were safe. We were free. And no table that refused to feed my son would ever get another seat in our lives.